Hello, and welcome to Everyday Board Games with your host, Daniel.
And Daniel.
Daniel, today we are here with a review for cool animal facts from our friends at Level 99 Games.
Yeah, love those guys. That whole group is fantastic.
That's right, and they provide us a copy of this. Now, we want to be very clear on this before we go into our review. First off, we here at the Everyday Board Games podcast and the Everyday Board Games group, we like to make our reviews as unbiased as possible. You'll see why and how we do that here in a moment, in case you're not familiar with our review process. But we want to be very clear on this fact that the guys from Level 99 are friends of ours, and we have visited their hometown many times. We've had dinner with them. They're wonderful people, and they did provide us this copy for free to do a review. So always keep that in mind while we're reviewing it, but we will give our reasoning why we do or don't agree with whether it meets our criteria or not. So, with that being said, though, we have 5 gamer criteria that we bring in, and each one of us can give a point to this game for each of those criteria, giving it a 0 to 10 scale on how good it is for this review.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Yep. So let's talk about what this game is real quick. Cool Animal Facts is a party game. 3 to 8 players, 20 minutes, very light, 8 plus players. Again, from Level 99 and Keir Arnold, which I have met before. This is a game where it's essentially kind of like a liar's dice kind of game, but more of a party game. Do you know stuff about animals? You're going to be adding traits throughout these different cards, like the animal lives in cities, or have paws, or has a tail, or can breathe underwater. And
or
as
extinct.
Or extinct. And as you're adding these different traits to it, you're essentially saying until one person, you don't believe that the person who placed down the trait can name an animal that matches all the traits. If they do, or if they are challenged by it, whoever challenged them potentially might get a point as well. Basically, if I challenge your animal after all those traits and you're able to name it, then I would get a penalty point. Otherwise, you would get a penalty point. And so it's the first one to get rid of their cards by playing out these traits is the winner. So yeah, it's pretty strategic in how it works. It's not really like penalty points. I guess you get cards from your hand and you're trying to...
You just get extra cards, so make it harder for you to shed.
Yeah, you're trying to expel the cards in your hand. So it's pretty straightforward. Our first category is game immersion.
All right, and just a caveat for people who listen to our past review. Yes, if you have not been listening to the podcast lately, we re-scrambled our words, and now we have the gamer criteria.
That's right. So game immersion, first off talks, is the game fun to lose. Then we have player interaction or table talk, like role-playing and stuff. And then we finally have memorable moments. So this game, it does have a few of these parts. The fun to lose, I would say it is pretty interesting. Unless you're just not knowledgeable about animals. And that's one of the tricky parts about it, right? Is that if you are forced into playing this and you're not a fan of like knowing animal traits, then you probably won't have that the same fun to lose aspect of it. You either need to play with a group that is either equally as good as you or equally as bad as you.
Yeah.
That's the way you're going to get the maximum play out of this. So as far as that is, it is a party game and it does meet that.
Yeah.
So with that, I think it works very well with a party. I think the fact that since it keeps ramping up with every card that's played, you can start like planning out. And there is times where you have those memorable moments where you're thinking like, oh, this thing has wings. It can do this. It can do that. You're like, man, I can't think of a single bird that does that. And then your friend will say, well, I thought of an insect that does. Like, oh, yeah. Okay, there's a whole species of animals that
you haven't even looked
that I didn't even think about. Yeah, it didn't even cross my mind. So that has it. So I would give this a Daniel for my point.
All right, for me in the game immersion, it is going to get a Daniel for me as well. My only, you mentioned it at the top of your part of the review, is it the game fun to lose? I find it fine. It's a fun little party game aspect, but that hampens it down. Like one of our friends was just not into animals, didn't really care too much, so kind of drags it down. He doesn't know like as much as you would say, But everything else about it, it has a lot of player interaction. There is a lot of memorable moments. The giggling across the table. It's like, you didn't know what that was. Or you totally forgot about insects, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it lends itself to those aspects of our game immersion. So 2 out of 3 criteria, therefore it gets a Daniel from me.
Cool. Let's go into art and production now. So art and production, first we talk about the art itself, the pieces and components, and the graphic design. It comes in this nice little magnetic box that is just the size of 2 cards. I'm going to open it real quick just to kind of show you. The box itself is like filled to the brim with cards. Like there is no wiggle room in here. It is dense. It is a brick. And so you're getting a good bang for your buck. And I think this game like retails at $20 or something.
Yeah.
And even the inside of the box has art printed on it. It has some weird illustrations, but in a good way. Like they're very silly. I don't know if I can get this on the camera here, but yeah, go check out the page. But there we go. We got a little bit. They're just goofy, silly illustrations of different animals. I like that. The card quality is perfect for what it needs to do. It shuffles nice. There's a lot of stuff, and it doesn't need anything specifically graphic design. And in fact, I actually like the fact that they just did outlines for the animals. They didn't actually use it as like colored illustrations or anything, because then I think that would be a little too obvious. Whereas like if I put down, a picture of a bear, then, it could be a black bear or brown bear or whatever, or polar bear. But if it's colored in, then that would kind of already allude to that. And I don't think that would be great. The only bad thing I think that's about the production, and I don't know a way to fix it because I know they wanted to have those animals in it, is I wasn't a fan that there was an animal on every card, because then in the first like 2 or 3 cards, you could just straight up say the animal that's on the card, and it would probably match most of the criteria. That was my only real gripe about it. I don't think it's a really bad thing. That out of the top of my head, that was like, I remember noting that when we played it.
Okay, so Daniel, yes?
Yes, I give this a Daniel. Yes.
I'm like, you're forgetting the whole point.
Yes.
All right, so on my aspect of the art production, I think the pieces and components are the best. The box is fantastic. The card quality is great. I'm not a fan of the art. It's not easy for me. And the big fact of like what you're talking about with the animal on the card can fit the subject that you're talking about.
Sure.
It kind of messes for me with the graphic design because it kind of takes the fun out of the game aspect of it. So for me, unfortunately, this does not get a Daniel. Like I said, not a fan of the art. The graphic design makes it a little too easy for some people. But the pieces and components, the card quality, the box, fantastic, well done. I understand why they went the way they did to keep it at a low price point.
Yep.
But there's something about it. That art just does not enthrall me. So no Daniel for me.
See, I love the ridiculous art. Francesca Romero, I dig those illustrations. Those are funny for me. But I get it. It's not. I figured it wasn't everybody's cup of tea. Next one we have is meaningful choice.
And when we're talking about that, we're talking about the impact on other players. Do the depth of strategy, tactics, or skills, and do arbitrary choices or AP make an impact on the game? This one is a little tough for me with the hemming and hawing, because you can impact other players' strategies because based on the card play that goes out there at the table, if someone is not familiar with a flying type of animal or an extinct style animal, or that needs to be part bird in a sense, because I think we had that issue when we played the game.
Right.
You're like, wait, that's not true. And I'm like, yeah, it is. There was a whole nest of them, and you were trying to call me out on, I think it was the pterodon I was talking about. And I'm like, no, they were in North America. They found a whole big nest in, like, Montana or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Some
there's
of
that aspect. But there is a little bit of impact on other player strategy because you can call the player out. But going back to the game immersion aspect of it, if someone is not very familiar with animals, that can be very impactful because they're going to have a hard time shedding their cards because they're always going to get called out. And if it's common knowledge, they're going to get called out a lot.
Yeah.
There's not really a lot of depth, strategy, or tactics really in this one. So for me, that's not a point for it either, because it's basically you just got to have a good memory in this sense.
Sure.
And there's not really any arbitrary choices, so that's fine on this one. So it is going to get the tick for arbitrary choices, but the other 2 ticks in the meaningful choice aspect of it, I just can't give it a Daniel, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm almost in the same way. I mean, it is a party game. I want that to be very clear.
It is a caveat. It is a party game.
And knowing, I consider that a skill, knowing different types of animals and really understanding it. Like, I would love to watch, like, people who work for like a zoo or biologists and stuff actually play this. I think that would be like one of the funniest things to watch. People who are just so knowledgeable about all these specifics. I think that'd be really fun. But again, like, we're not the biggest animal people.
I like animals.
And I know you like animals.
I go to the zoos all the time.
Okay, well then, I'm not the biggest animal person. I like zoos, sure, but like, I don't know facts about animals. And I felt like that was a hindrance for parts of it. Did I have less fun? Maybe a little bit, but not too much. But again, I don't think that this game is all about that strategic depth. I don't think it's about that strategy. The skill is only involved when you have people who understand animals, and they have to be passionate about it to do so. But as far as impacting other players, I do think that that's a plus for it, because knowing if there's somebody who like knows a lot about dogs or mammals or certain things, throwing stuff about birds and insects on it might make sense for them to try and do it, or to call them when there's a trait that might matter. You know, that's a perfect time to challenge them.
Okay.
However, as far as AP and arbitrary choices, that was the part that faltered for me personally. Is like, there was multiple times in the game where we would sit there on a hand of cards and we'd look at what's there. You're like, all right, hold on, give me a few minutes while I figure out an animal that does meet this anyway. And I know part of the game is about bluffing, but some people just aren't great at bluffing, which is fine. But if you take that moment, pause, where you're like,
It almost...
Oh, and then you throw it on that card, right?
It almost kind of needs a timer.
It almost kind of does need a timer, right. And so, like, players are supposed to self-time by bluffing. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But it's a trivia-esque game in a way, because of how that works. It's essentially liar's dice with animal trivia in a weird way. So I don't give it meaningful choice just because of that. But no, again, I say that with the caveat of it being a party game. I get that. Not many party games meet the meaningful choice criteria in the long run anyway. So now we have ease of play. That's me. Ease of play, simplicity and familiarity of the mechanisms, likelihood to get it to the table, and easy to learn, understand, or teach. Without a doubt, this gives a Daniel for me. It's very simple. We literally did teach you the whole game. Like, it's pretty straightforward. Is it likely to get to the table? Yeah, who doesn't like animals, right? Like, most people do.
Party game.
Yeah, it's a simple party game. Plays a big player count, really easy. And yeah, to understand it, you can just keep going. It makes perfect sense. Like, this is one of those games where you don't have to teach somebody. They can watch a group play and they'll understand how to play when it's done. Yeah,
by far this is the easiest Daniel for me as well.
Yep.
Everything you said, the simplicity of it, the familiarity just of an animal / trivia style bluffing game. People are going to be intrigued by that. Because of that, that's going to be one that's really easy to get to the table. And again, like you said, we described the entire game at the very top of the game, and that we described it as we keep going. You should know how to play this game by now, by this criteria. Right. So, yeah, I agree with you. This is a Daniel for me as well. All right,
and our last criteria is replay value, which is talking about the length of time and how well it scales per player, the minimum number of plays for the full experience, and the expandability, whether there's expansions confirmed or hinted at by current or by the publisher or designer. So there's no expansions for this yet. There could be, but there's not. But I do want to point out something that is in there, is that there are blank cards in there. So as you come up with your own criteria, you can make your own. I love the fact that they did that for a party game. That's appreciative always, that you can add in your own stuff to party games and make it unique to your group. So yes, as far as that goes, expandability, that's one of the best ways to do that without having expansions. But minimum number of plays for the full experience, there's a lot of cards in here. I don't know how many there are, but there's like 150, 200. Yeah, 150 cards, 6 blank cards, and a rule sheet. That's it. So that's a lot of different games. You're not going to get many cards to play with. So it's real simple, and you only play out the hand you have. So you could play probably like 5 or 6 times before you ever repeat anything. And of course, it scales really well. Up to 8 players in 20 minutes, that's about right. So, gets a huge Daniel for me.
Alrighty. And for me, it gets a Daniel as well. The only thing I have issues with on this criteria is expandability. There's no expansion, so I can't really give it a Daniel. We don't know if there is expansions for it. It could be easily expanded upon. Yeah. I don't know how you would fit it in this one little box there. Sure. But length of time is scaling well. It plays fine with 4 players. It plays great with 8 players. It does what it needs to do. in the minimum number of plays for the full experience. It's a bluffing game, so you're just changing out the criteria as you're going along, so you have to come up with different combinations of animals. So that alone is, there's multiple things that changes every time you play it. So another one is an easy Daniel for me as well. With that being said, that is totally. 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so it has a 7 out of 10 on the G.A.M.E.R criteria for the Everyday Board Games channel. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them, or whether you agree or disagree in the comments below. Again, thank you to Level 99 for providing us a copy of this game. And that was cool animal facts from Level 99 Games.
And that, with that being said, remember, every day is a good day for board gaming.